covering Erratic, Volume 2, Recharged, and Ninja Gaiden, Issue 3. So I'll get things prepared I'll be reviewing for today on the channel. And that is Erratic. So first things first, does this cover in any shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? In some essence it is. So for that, it's getting a 7 out of 10 from me. Now it's time to move into the internal art, which we'll get to have a look around the beginning, middle, and of course the end, and also what's happening story-wise, with our main character being Ollie, and of course his family and what's happening there. So here is some of the art around the beginning of the story, and we've got the main character Ollie heading into school, and of course his new bestie called Iana, and of course he ends up meeting with some friends of his at school, which is really nice. And of course what his brother's been up to as well. We'll now move towards the middle of the story, and sure enough, in the middle of the story we've got a bit of an interesting event, and we've got Ollie actually catching up with his dad, who we first believed in sort of like the first season that something bad might have happened to him. And of course Iana's all over the idea of Ollie catching up with his old man. We never get to find out the old man's name, but I'm not too worried about that. And let's move to last but not least, towards the end of the story. As to when they return home, of course he catches up with Casper, his brother, after what happened in school, and also, yes, he did have to turn into Erratic at least once in the story. And of course, some of the things that are happening in other places, and I think if I remember, that's his mother, who's now, I think, beginning to get into some work. And for the overall internal art rating for this story, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. Of course, it's not as perfect as what it was in the first volume, but it's still an enjoyable story. So moving into the next thing, and that is the story rating. So first things first, did we get any indication of time within the story? No, we didn't. The next thing is locations. Well, we had Mapleton Heights, which Ollie goes to with his brother, and now Iana, who he met on that trip in the first issue. The cast of characters consisting of Ollie, Casper, Iana. We got, I think it's Mark. No, Maple, Beach. I think it's Rolly. And last but not least, Ollie's dad. For the overall rating of this, a 7.5 out of 10. I'll now get things ready to cover the next. So now we are moving on to Ninja Gaiden. Now this story is still getting quite interesting, and I think this is going to be a good story when it does actually come out in trade paperback form or softcover trade. So first things first, in relation to this cover, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside with the story? Sure enough it does, because you do get to get this character, well, fight against ghosts. in Ninja Gear. Well, a modified Ninja Gear. So I'll now go to showing some of the internal art around the beginning, middle, and end, and also what's happening there. And as we move into the beginning of the story, we've got Yuki, who is going up against a number of these ghosts, and of course killing them and whatever else with the Kaiden gear. As we draw a little bit closer to the middle of the story, we have Yuki actually catching up with his old man in the afterlife, and he sort of like lays down some words of wisdom to him, and he also brings up in his discussion with his old man about the Kaiden gear, because we do get a bit of a flashback, and we got no idea when this flashback takes place. But he does remember his old man like telling him that like the Kaiden gear is the key. Moving into some of the art towards the end, and we start to draw towards the end of the story, and we get a little bit more of a discussion. And it looks like he's going to have some opposition in some upcoming issues. Some bigger upcoming opposition. So it looks like there might be someone who'll be probably wanting to steal his gear. Or if I were to guess, maybe try to replicate his gear. So that they can make a big, huge profit off it. So for the internal art, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the story rating. First things first, in relation to the story rating, do we get any indication as to when things are taking place? About the closest I could work out is that it's taking place at night. The location that this story is taking place is actually at his dad's house, to which he gets some unwelcome guests, including spiritual guests as well as physical. And last but not least, we have the cast of characters consisting of Yuki, his dead old man in the afterlife, and of course, last but not least, his fiancée, Mary Beth. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.